Good morning. Cheers. Hope everybody is well. Welcome to Tip Off. For those of you on YouTube, I am wearing the I Am an X Factor shirt from a few years ago as a tribute to the Jazz fans last night at Energy Solutions Arena and all of those of you that were at home tuning in as you were truly marvelous last night. What a great game last night. That was big time. That was fun. That was a huge win. Uh, Bunch of stuff to talk about. Super Bowl media days today. I have a funny Radio Disney chairlift story, but I'm going to push those all to the back burner and just talk about last night. We'll see if I get to Jazz tip-off questions. But last night was so jam-packed of things to talk about. I'm not sure I will. Let me just start big picture. Let me go back to the opening debate that Scott Gerard and I have had and others have had on what this organization was supposed to do this year, whether they should have really just thrown out Favors, Cantor, Burks, and Hayward and let them play, or whether with the veteran core of at the time Jefferson, Millsap, Okur, Miles, Watson, Harris, Tinsley, try to win Howard. Um, and that was remember that debate, and I probably sided on really what was most important to me was getting the young kids the minutes. Kevin O'Connor had a different vision. And his vision was that this team would play as hard as it can every night, play to win, try to make the playoffs, and the young kids would learn how to play right in that process and play more important minutes because of it. And last night is the epitome of how well that is working. Now, again, very favorable home schedule, met a lot of teams at the right time, still an awfully long way to go for this team to make the playoffs. But regardless of whether they make the playoffs or not, or whether they're able to fight through some of the injuries as the season goes on, what we had last night was Gordon Hayward bouncing back. Now, he's definitely earned himself 30, 35 minutes a night on the floor or whatever it is, and he's getting his time. But what Gordon Hayward learned last night, big picture, is enormous. 0 for 9 in the first half. The 9:30 mark of the halftime left, he's out on the floor all by himself, stewing, and he, against the same guys, proved to himself that he could then impact the game. Enes Kanter's work last night on LaMarcus Aldridge late in the game is so much more valuable than just getting time for time's sake. That's his longest run, maybe his career high in minutes. Uh, and he learned how to play tired. We've talked about that a lot with him, that he plays 6 or 7 minutes at a time, and then he's tired and he's done. Last night, he learned how to play tired, which is a huge step in a huge moments. And really, he and Favors stymied LaMarcus Aldridge. And if you listen to LaMarcus Aldridge's post-game show last night in the 1320 KFM with live interviews in the locker room, Aldridge said, well, first he admitted that he was a little tired, which tells me that, and then he talked about his teammates being open. What that told me is that Cantor had made it tough. Cantor had made it difficult. Aldridge can score in Cantor. But Cantor had made it difficult and made it tough, and Aldridge wilted at that moment and gave the ball up and let his teammates do it. It sounds good in a post-game press conference, but the reality is Cantor was pushing him off the block, pushing him out further than he needed to go, and he was able to take Aldridge out of his comfort zone, and Aldridge didn't fight to get back into it. And that was the key to this basketball game, because without Aldridge, those guys don't have another scorer. Wesley's their second leading next scorer. He was not very good last night. Gordon Hayward's defense on Wesley Matthews yesterday, pretty fabulous, starting at the 2. Lots of other moments, things to talk about. But the message that's getting across to the young kids is really the value of every second and every possession, and they're fulfilling it. whether it is Derek Favors sprinting the floor on two of those misses by Gordon Hayward in the open floor in the second quarter and still putting those in where he doesn't quit on the possession. You can see that that lesson is coming across. The examples of guys making plays last night to keep things alive. Gordon Hayward sprinting down the floor for the block shot on the layup uh, after Cantor gets blocked by Camby in a three-point game to keep it a three-point game. Very similar to the Gordon Hayward block shot in Denver earlier this year. And the guy that's leading this all unquestionably is number 11, Earl Watson. Watson has become the leader of this team. There's no need to name a captain because you just screw things up unless it becomes so abundantly clear the players request it. Millsap sets an example. Raja battles. These guys all battle, but Earl Watson changes the team. Now, Nate McMillan is an enormous Earl Watson fan from the time in which they were together in Seattle and that Nate had him. But talking to Nate, who I obviously know quite well, before the game, we talked all the other stuff, family stuff, and then finally I just said, what looks different to you? And he said, Earl Watson. He said, Earl Watson is putting his stamp on this team, and every time he gets out on the floor, he impacts the game and sets the tone of toughness. And you see him there meeting the guys at half court with his arms spread and ready to go. And he really does a fabulous job of setting the tone for who this team is, what they're going to do, and how they're going to do it. And I think that's and it's a model. I mean, these guys are seeing it. This is the whole thing that Hayward sees. And Earl's such a good dude. And there's something to Earl's coming off the bench willingly that makes this team kind of matches what this whole team's about. There are so many moments. Hayward 3, Watson finger roll layup, Watson pull up jumper on the offensive end, Cantor stops of Aldridge on the defensive end. Watson sneaking behind Batum to get the block. Hayward to get the rebound off the missed free throw. I mean, they're endless. They are endless. And what last night's game was, they shot 38% and won. They lived at the free throw line for all the griping about the officials. But that's a night where you're going to gripe about the officials because both teams are playing tough and it's physical and they're grabbing and they're holding and all of those things could be called fouls at every minute. So that was just one of those games, and it's just impossible to officiate. I didn't think that the officials were great on it, but it's almost an impossible game to officiate as much as anything else. So that win is about toughness. It's about team personality. And if you just play hard enough and you play tough enough and you put your stamp as Tyrone Corbin has, you're going to win games in the NBA. We don't have the talent to win, the equivalent of 55, 60 games. We frankly probably don't have the talent to win more than 30 games in an 82-game schedule. But they're going to play hard enough right now to do it. This team is becoming, with a little more talent, very similar to that team was supposed to be so terrible under Sloan. So that's my take on last night. I'm sure I'm going to miss 1,000 things and wish I could go back to them. And I'm going to try to do some analysis of various pieces today if I can. I got a meeting, and actually Salt City Hoops and I are going to tape a podcast for his site. And then Kevin Pelton and I are going to launch a new podcast. I talked to Gordy Chiesa for a long time yesterday. We're not going to be able to do things weekly. It just doesn't work with our schedules. But we're gonna do it every now and then. He'll kind of be in the scout rotation. And I talked to Kevin Pelton of Basketball Prospectus, and for those of you that are kind of geeky, we're going to do Mythbusters podcast, which is we'll take a myth that's out there and discuss the reality of it and the truth of it in its existence. I think our first one is home court advantage, and we'll run through all those on the Mythbusters podcast. You guys, your suggestions coming in have just been marvelous. Including, I've got to figure out how to do this. If someone knows how to do it, I'm going to try to figure it out. someone suggested that we do a Google Hangout that I record with other reporters in kind of a roundtable setting. And then the other idea that actually that jumped into is why wouldn't I just set a time that I'm doing a Google Hangout with you guys and take them basically as callers, and then we record that once a week as a podcast for so we have some actual interaction. Um, and then if you ask a stupid question, I can make funny, and then everybody calls me mean. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's go to some of the lock tip-off questions that we have here for a second. Um, Coach Perry, since the Jazz are pretty equal 1 through 10, how hard is it for them to overcome the loss of two starters? Um, I think in theory, you really saw the loss of Jefferson and Raja last night because we couldn't run the offense, and those are the guys that actually know the offense fairly well. And um, the guys that are doing a lot of different and are able to do a lot of things. And that's, I mean, last night you had on the floor Favors, who probably only runs the offense okay, and then the other one I think would be the that Josh Howard doesn't know it great. So that was a large part of the problem with the offense last night, and some of that toughness early that Raja brings was missing. So you're just missing their personalities, but no, talent-wise, Burks is playing well. I was talking to Antonio Harvey of the Portland broadcast after the game last night. He thinks Burks is going to be fabulous. He really likes us. He thinks, oh my gosh, what a combination. And I said, well, do we have a star? And he goes, well, maybe Burks is your star, but I'm not sure it matters. He's like, they just were just reveling in the talent we have coming up. C Sublime sent me about 1 million questions. No, I'm just kidding, buddy. Sent me about. I feel like I'm getting to know you guys. Five or six questions, and I really appreciate again you guys telling me how you use tip off and what you do, and please keep the thoughts coming. I absolutely love it. But he wanted to point out that one of the keys to the win when I was watching this Deion Crawford down the stretch. And it's so true because Felton's playing badly. He's really a problem for them. Boy, they miss Andre Miller. And Felton is playing badly, and they had to take him out of the game. So now Crawford is playing the point, but Crawford's not a point guard. That dribble off the foot was a huge play. And just in general, they couldn't get into their stuff, which is also then why Cantor was able to push Aldridge off the block because Aldridge had to try to hold his position for a lot longer than he wanted to, and therefore he was able to hold it off. So, um, you know, that's a key moment. I mean, Watson was just great last night. I mean, he was there. There was a sequence where he gets the steal, he gets another rebound. He was just unbelievable. He was everywhere last night, and it's hard to maybe give him credit for one thing, but because he just did everything last night. Um, Corbin sticking with CJ and Cantor. Love it. I love how he's sticking with. I was stunned at how long. That's from KG Poggi. I actually liked most of the comments today. Are really positive. I appreciate that. I was as you know, I've been getting tired of people complaining. And really, our offense stunk last night for part of the game. So there's an areas where you can complain. You can complain about every 48-minute game. The running Cantor for that final 13 minutes was stunning to me, and it worked, which was even cooler about it. But frankly, everything Ty has done for the most part this year has really worked more often than not. Why doesn't Favors shoot more from Nicholas Barker? Partially because we've got guys like Millsap and Jefferson who are on the floor who can shoot and get their shots off. And Favors is not a good post player yet. I've posted some of those post numbers, and we'll continue to post some of those numbers for you. And it's very difficult for him to always get his shots off. And we're not wasting possessions just for the sake. We're trying to win every night, so we're not just giving him the ball in the post to waste possessions. And as he gets better and better, he'll get some opportunities in that regard, and that's kind of the whole thing that I'm talking about here, where they're learning their development and the importance of possessions and not how to waste possessions and all of those things that are so vital. Not trying to be a Millsap hater, is he getting more credit than he deserves in the team from sled underscore HED20? No, I don't think really his job right now is to probably do more than he's capable of doing. I know everybody wants to talk about how he's playing like an all-star, but I think we've really seen in the Toronto game and the Portland game that he probably is not an all-star. That's not quite where he is yet. Aldridge one-on-one is a matchup that he couldn't handle last night. Bargnani was tough on him. But he battles endlessly, and he's probably not your number one scorer and your number one option. So you're suddenly asking Paul to do things that are outside of where he's probably at his best, and that in turn is going to make him a little less effective and things of that nature. But he's battling. I mean, last night he ends up with 15 rebounds, 16 rebounds last night, 17 points while shooting about 5 of something. So he's struggling a tiny bit. But he's struggling because you're asking him to do more than he probably should be. 6'7", 6'8", trying to score down low every position. And yet there it was late in the game. One awesome move, going to the baseline, spinning back, hitting. I mean, that was a sick play, and that was the field goal we had to have, and he got it. And he's, final 2 minutes of a game this year, close game, I think he's 7 of 11 from the field. So you're asking an awful lot out of Paul. His body is probably getting worn down, and he is finding a way to make it work. The idea that early second round draft pick is battling the number 2 pick of the draft every night. Bargnani, the number 1 pick of the draft. Blake, the number 1 pick of the draft on Wednesday night. You're asking an awful lot out of him. All right, what a great win. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for your incredible support of this team. Last night was really fun, and I know not everybody can either be there because of work or afford to be there or whatever reason. I know you were there in spirit. So tip of the hat to all of you rooting this team on and creating the energy that makes the crowd fabulous. That's the atmosphere and an environment I like to work in rather than what we had earlier this week where it felt like a scrimmage. So please, if you get a chance, 8:30 game Wednesday, come on out, support the guys, Blake, Griffin, and Chris Paul. It's worth seeing. We get to see both of them. They're rolling. I didn't see the final last night, but they were blasting Oklahoma City when I finally turned it off. So have a good one. Thanks so much. Send your questions to Twitter, #LockedTipOff. Send your suggestions on what you want from Locked on Jazz Podcast and the portal as we increase that role for me coming up here shortly. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. And we'll have some podcasts for you during the day.